I'm Jamie Cood, the president of Terry Tech Computer Consultants. Thank you for joining me for my podcast, Better, Faster, Stronger, where we help move New York Metro businesses forward with tips on motivation, leadership, management, and innovation. Joining us this week is Erren. Karen is the president and CEO of Feeding Westchester in Elmsford, New York. Thanks for joining us, Karen. How you doing?
Thank you so much for having me, Jamie. I'm doing great. Thank you. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. Things are starting to warm up. So I like the warm weather. It's been a long winter, right? For a lot of reasons, and
Absolutely.
things are starting to open up out there too, as well as from the COVID landscape, and we have some reductions in what we can do or need to do with the masks. So things are going good.
It's an exciting time, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So I was speaking with Karen a little bit before we started here, and she said that she's a podcast expert. She does this all the time. So
I don't think that's exactly what I said, Jamie.
It was something like that, but you've got lots of experience. So I think that we're going to get a lot of good tips here from Karen. So a good place to start is maybe tell me a little bit about yourself, some of your background, your professional background, your education, whatever you think would be relevant to the podcast. I'm sure users or listeners would like to hear more about you.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie, again for having me and the opportunity to speak about my career and our work here at Feeding Westchester. So I actually started my career in corporate advertising and marketing. And what I found is I loved the work, but I didn't care about the product. So I didn't care what bank you used or what cell phone you used. None of that really resonated with me. And so what I did is I was simultaneously sort of having a very rocky experience at a corporate advertising agency in my hometown of Little Rock, Arkansas. And at the same time, I was on a missions and outreach committee at my downtown church. And so those two experiences began to clarify for me that I just didn't want to be in corporate advertising and marketing. So I went to my CEO and I said to him, I'm going to quit. I'll see you through the end of fiscal year, but I'm going to quit. And he said to me, well, where are you going to go? And I said, oh, I don't have another job yet. And he looks at me and he goes, no, really, where are you going to go? And I said, no, really, I don't have another job yet, right? I had two young daughters, so it was a very interesting time. But what I did is I went to see
How long ago was that? How long ago was that time frame?
So that would have been, I'm going to tell you 2003. So what, 17 years ago, maybe? So I went to the senior pastor at this downtown church I was a part of and went leading the missions and outreach work. And I said to her, you said you wanted a staff person. I put together a job description and I want you to hire me. And she said, I'll never forget it. Well, I only have part-time budget, so I can hire you for 20 hours a week at $15,000 a year.
Ooh, it's hard to live on that with two kids, right?
Right. And so, I really wanted this. So I said, okay. And then I spoke with a friend who owned a restaurant and I said, I need a job. So for the 18 months where I worked at that church, which was really the bridge in my career transition, I worked part-time at the church and then I also waited tables at a local restaurant.
Oh, talk about a total change of careers. Wow, that's crazy.
Well, I always say, so, waiting tables is just like ad agency work. It's just like the nonprofit leadership roles that I was lucky enough to get into following that experience. It's all about customer service.
Customer service. You took the words. I was going to say that. You beat me to it.
All about relationships.
So what were you doing at the church? What did that look like?
So I got to lead the mission and outreach visioning, which was amazing. We were looking at how to be a really active member of the downtown community. So we did visioning around adult daycares, and they had a program for a while. We did homeless outreach, mission work in Burkina Faso. So it was really lovely. I was there about 18 months and a new leader came in, and when that happens, there's always some transition. So I remember really clearly saying to one of my good volunteers, I think it's time for me to leave. And she got absolutely silent. And I thought, oh no, I've confided in the wrong person. And then she said to me, I've got someone I want you to meet. She's CEO of the Arkansas Food Bank, and she needs a development director.
No kidding. So it's almost like it was meant to be, right? So the
Yeah.
timing was right, and you bridged the gap between what you're doing in corporate America, got a little inventive there, and then, I mean, a little serendipity there, meant to be, or, whatever you want to call it, fate.
I couldn't agree with you more. What I find is when something is meant to be, it sort of unfolds beautifully. Certainly, there are times we have to fight for what is important to us in our professional career, and the really golden, magical moments are when you look back and say it just unfolded beautifully.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, if you're pushing too hard for something, sometimes it's not meant to be, but when it opens up, it's the right path. So I agree.
I completely agree.
So this was, I'm sorry, you said it was a food bank, and this was in Arkansas.
That's correct. That's my hometown where I was born and raised, and I went back home in about 1999 with a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old.
And how long were you at this food bank?
I was at the Arkansas Food Bank for 5 years. I was development director, and so I helped that organization raise money. We did a capital campaign for a new building during that time. And then I got recruited for my first organizational leader position at Ronald McDonald House Charities of Arkansas, also in Little Rock.
Oh, great. What's your background? What's your training in?
Oh, I have a BA in communications. I'll tell you something funny that we haven't gotten to this job yet, but at one of my background checks, I got a phone call from the recruiter, and she said to me, because I'd always said I had a BS in communications, it seemed more applicable, right?
Yeah, I know. Right, that doesn't exactly roll off the tongue sometimes.
So anyway, the head of the search committee called me and she said, "You don't have a BS." I'm like, "Are you sure?" She said, "You have a BA." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Be something.
Maybe I have both.
So then you were working at Ronald McDonald House, and how long were you? What was your position there?
So I was executive director at Ronald McDonald House Charities of Arkansas. And I was there about 4.5 years, also a capital campaign there that I was involved through about 50% of it. And then I relocated. So my children had gone off to school, and my then husband took a job in Jacksonville, Florida. So I went down there, but it wasn't our place. To your point earlier, just wasn't our place. And so I next took a job with a advertising agency that only worked with nonprofits. And I knew, that my natural habitat was not corporate advertising, but I thought, well, it's focused purely on nonprofits, on fundraising, on multi-channel communications. So I'll give it a try. Well, there were about 5 layers above me and about 5 layers below me, and I was instantly claustrophobic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the great thing about it is I got to work with food banks and human service organizations across the United States. So I worked with food banks and other social service organizations, about 30 of them. So it was amazing to see the different ways that different communities interfaced and developed their food banks.
Yeah, I'm sure you get a lot of ideas, you make a lot of connections, and obviously you're learning more about that space.
That's right. So there's an old saying, once a food banker, always a food banker. And that was really my experience. So I was at that company then called Russ Reed, and I really missed being on the front line. So what we were talking about, I made myself a list. I was out in Southern California working for this firm, and I knew that both the geographical location and the job itself were not exactly what I wanted. So I made a list. I'd been an executive director, I'd been at a food bank, but I'd never been organizational lead at a food bank. So that was an unrealized professional goal. So that was at the top of my list. I'm an East Coast girl, not a West Coast girl. So that was second on my list. So I went through my desires and requests.
You're an East Coast girl though, huh?
Yeah. I grew up spending my summers just north of Boston with my grandmother, and it just my heart.
So that's where that comes from. Understood. I get it. I'm an East Coast too.
So that was in 2017, and Palm Beach County Food Bank needed an executive director, and I was fortunate enough to get that position.
Wow, fantastic. And then, so how'd you end up in New York then?
So last year, as we all know, right, was so challenging. And as COVID began to manifest, and unfold, you may remember that last March, we all thought it was going to be temporary.
Yeah.
Right. And so I literally spent 3 to 4 months saying, 8 to 12 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks. And that was sort of the timeline I had in mind for phase one. And then we all thought, I think, or many of us thought, things would kind of settle down for the summer, right? And then we were worried about a phase two in the fall. Right. So I have 2 now grown daughters, both in Queens. And so I did the exact same thing. I made myself a list and I said, I want to stay in food banking. I want to be close to my girls. I had some, other parameters and pulled up LinkedIn, and there was the president and CEO position of Feeding Westchester.
Wow, look, you know what? It's just fate. You were definitely meant to be there. Did it happen?
It means so much to me.
Quickly? Was it just like that? You pulled up, the job postings and you saw that?
So they were moving pretty quickly and I was moving pretty quickly. So of course, golly, I went through an extensive interview process, made more interesting by the fact that you are looking at the first virtual, made more interesting by the fact that you are looking at the candidate who was first hired purely
virtually. Yeah, no, that's tough. I understand what you're talking about. Yeah,
Let me try that one more time, can I?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Made more interesting by the fact that you are looking at the first candidate hired solely through a virtual process by the recruiting agency, the Sandler firm.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jamie, so my son-in-law still teases me about this. So we were literally getting ready to book my flight up here for me to meet the team and see the facility and see the community, and Floridians were put in quarantine.
Oh, right. Yeah, everything's timing, right?
That's right. So I got an offer sight unseen, met the team virtually as well, and took my apartment sight unseen.
Wow. What a story. That's crazy. And here you are. Now you're in New York. When were you able to move up?
I moved up last July. I did my quarantine last July, and then my first day in the office was August 3rd.
Wow. So you're coming up on a year. Congratulations. That's fantastic.
It is such a joy for me to have joined this team and this community. I really feel grateful almost every moment of every day.
So I would like to change gears a little bit and talk about, look, you have great experience and great stories, and I am certain we could probably talk for hours and still go on, with tips and information that you could share with our listeners. But what I would like to do is I'm going to shift gears a little bit and I'm going to ask you some questions. What made you better? What made you faster? What made you stronger? Not necessarily you, but the organizations and that sort of thing, that you could share with our listeners in the New York Metro business community. But I would also like you to showcase Feeding Westchester a little bit. Because I think what you guys do is so important. I mean, it goes without saying, especially now more than ever. So if, I want to find some time that we could talk about that and how we can, join in, if we're interested in participate and learn more about that. So
I so appreciate that.
So I'd like to talk about that, and no specific agenda, but we'll start with the first question. So like I said, you've done a lot. You've been a lot of places. You have a ton of experience. If there's one thing that you could share that has made the organizations that you've worked with or for, that has made them better, what would that be?
So I really strongly believe that the key to professional success is a willingness to see yourself clearly. I always tell my team, we can solve anything if we're willing to identify it and we put it out on the table and we solve it. So when I think about opportunity to improve, to be better, that really is the number one recommendation that I have.
That's an interesting perspective. My training is in mechanical engineering. So it's really identifying all the inputs, right? What are getting some data, getting some data points. And that's what you have to start with.
Absolutely. And one of the things I think is really important, and one of the reasons I feel so fortunate to have come up through nonprofit leadership, to have my first organizational leadership position was with a very small organization. My second one, the organization was larger, but it was a startup, so it was challenged from a resource perspective.
Sure.
And then now here at Feeding Westchester, it's just such an opportunity to continue the great history of impact that this organization has over the past 33 years. And so I say that because you're absolutely right. I believe that as a leader, you need to understand your business. You don't want to live in the weeds. You need to stay elevated and inspire your team and offer the opportunity for each of them and their teams to have their own real estate and their own impact. At the same time, I think it's really critical to know enough about your business so you know when something can be improved. Like what are the, exactly like you said, what are the key performance indicators or the inputs or outflows? What are you measuring so that you can be assured that your business is as efficient and as effective as possible?
I think an interesting comment to make on what you're saying there too would be, so when you're working with teams and you're trying to identify, where are we, what's really going on, get these data points and find out, you need to work with obviously all of the teams. So they're going to be giving you this information, and in doing so too, I think it gives them ownership as well. So it's not you, doing your own independent research and then going to the teams and telling them what you think they need to fix or work on or improve or make more efficient. So, I mean, then you're working as a team. And if you're working together as a team and everyone's collaborating, people feel a little bit more ownership and they take pride in what they're doing then because they're part of not only identifying the problem, but also solving it. So
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and it also makes, I think, our team members stronger. So one of the things that I believe has been lost, and I'm curious your thoughts about this because, of course, you're grounded in tech, but as everything has become so automated, what it leads to a lack of is understanding the building blocks that get you to the conclusion. So my dad was a structural engineer, and he literally had this triangular ruler and a pencil and that grid paper, and he would figure out how much steel needed to be in a building or a bridge so that it wouldn't collapse. Right? And so he knew. I always say the business instinct is the back of my neck is itching. Like that can't be right. He would know when something couldn't be right because he'd done the formula manually so many times. And he actually started a boot camp for young structural engineers through the firm he was with to help them develop that business instinct. Because if all you're doing is entering inputs into a machine, you just go with what the machine tells you, right?
Yeah, a bit of a gut check, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And I think that obviously you bring that experience to Feeding Westchester from your other food bank experience. I mean, so you have the ability, look, and that's not something you pick up overnight. I mean, that's through your career and all the things that you've done. So you have a good perspective, so working with the teams, identifying what some of the problems are, but also having your experience and acumen in regards to doing that gut check, I'm certain is why you guys are so successful.
Well, you're dear to say that. I love my profession. I feel honored to be here, and I take the opportunity to develop my knowledge and expertise around the components of my business really seriously. So I also, of course, have a really, really, really strong, fabulous team.
So what's cool? I have a lot of bright people that work with me. That was such a great better. But I don't know how to summarize that, but I'm gonna have the smart people that work for me summarize that better.
Well, I would say it's the willingness to see yourself clearly and develop the instincts to problem solve. How about that?
That's perfect, right? And then sprinkle in a little gut check.
That's right.
That expression, the back of my neck is itching. I never heard that before, and I love expressions like that. So I'm gonna steal it now.
Please, I give it to you.
Moving on. So I'm certain that you have a lot to share here, especially in your industry. What have you done that has made you, your business, your delivery, customer service faster?
Yeah, so I actually, and then tell me the third one again, Jamie. I'm so sorry. I want to make sure I'm not answering.
Better, faster, stronger. So we've done the better, we're on the faster, we got stronger to go through.
So I'm gonna change this slightly if you let me. By faster, I'm gonna talk about increased distribution volume here at Feeding Westchester throughout COVID. And one of the reasons I'm excited to apply that to this question is because this happened before I got here. This team demonstrated such innovation, last March 10th of 2020, the New Rochelle containment zone, right? Such a scary time for New Yorkers. And the team here at Feeding Westchester was distributing at that time just about, golly, let me get my numbers straight, just over 10 million pounds of food annually throughout the community. So what that means is we do that through two general ways. The first is we have an incredible network of partners throughout the county. So that's food pantries, soup kitchens, shelters, other organizations that serve people who need food and that provide food to them. Feeding Westchester also has direct distribution programs, most notably our mobile food pantry, which literally is a beverage truck like Pepsi uses that goes into the community, opens up the sides, sets up tables, and the food is available directly to our neighbors who need it. And you know, Jamie, I know you know, because of course you all are partners with us as well. When you think about Westchester County, frequently what you think about quickest is the wealth, the celebrities, the natural beauty. I think what COVID has helped bring to light is that not only for the past 33 years that Feeding Westchester has served this community, but today, pre-COVID, during COVID, and in the future, we also have hundreds of thousands of people in this county that don't have enough food in their homes, right? And so,
sorry to interrupt you, which you wouldn't think for this area, you know, because like you said, there's, you know, a lot of jobs and access to the city and opportunity. So you just wouldn't think that that would be the case. And I know that, you know, in reviewing some of your literature and some other forums I was reading online, the amount of people that are going without food is really shocking. It's really eye-opening.
It is eye-opening. I appreciate you saying that. Even pre-COVID, our network of partners and direct distribution programs, we were seeing 130 to 140,000 client visits each month. Okay, so that's a duplicated figure. So what that means is if Karen Erren went to a food pantry today and then went to a food pantry, you know, the 29th of this month, I would count twice. Okay.
Yeah.
But pre-COVID, 130, 140,000 each month. Right now, we are serving 250,000 each month.
Yeah, wow, double.
Right? And so when you said to me, what would you say about what made your organization faster? Like I said, I turned it just a slight bit. The team here reimagined our method of distribution, and they doubled volume almost overnight. And so when you think about how many meals we distributed in 2019, right, it was just about 10 million, 9 million meals roughly, okay? All right, let me try that again. When you think about, when you think about faster, in this instance, I appreciate you letting me talk about volume, right? Because in 2020, Feeding Westchester distributed 22 million pounds of food, which is equivalent to 18.4 million meals. All right?
That's insane.
Amazing, right? And it's literally double what we distributed in 2019. And we were able to do that because of the innovation and the commitment of this team to ensuring that we increased food to address the unprecedented increased need.
So how did that process look like? How did you, you know, obviously the team jumped to action and you have bright, talented individuals there. But, you know, if somebody else was saying, okay, I need to do something, clearly that was a major challenge and you guys rose to it and you did it very well. But not everyone is you know, has the same challenges, different industry, different locations, kind of thing. But if you had tips in regards to how could somebody else do something similar? I'm not in different scale and size and that sort of thing. But, you know, if you need to do something faster, what steps would you, you know, recommend that they go through?
So Jamie, do you want to guess what my least favorite sentence in the entire world is when it comes to business?
It's got to be some kind of, well, I'm going to say I can't. Either that or some kind of excuse. I don't like
that's a really good one.
I don't like excuses. I don't know what the sentence would be around there, or I can't, you know.
We've always done it that way.
Oh, okay.
Right?
I think that there's some parallels, some similarities there.
I completely agree. And so my invitation to folks who are trying to solve a business puzzle, whether it's in the midst of COVID-19, whether it's as we are recalibrating entry, right, is can you suspend that sentence and not think about the way you've always done it, or even maybe what's worked and what hasn't worked before, but reimagine the possibilities, and keeping in mind always, what do I most want to accomplish? So what do I most want to accomplish? And then another thing I recommend is that once you come up with a solution, you need to pause and consider the ripple effects of that solution. What are the unintended consequences of the decision that you're making? So then you weigh your risk and then you move forward.
I love it. I'm taking some notes. I think that that's fantastic. This is good for me. Forget my listeners.
Oh, you're so nice.
No, but this is really good information. Well, thank you for that. That's very helpful. Let's move on to our last question. What have you done that has made you, your team, your business, your organization stronger?
So I'll tell you something. I'm going to answer you from a leadership perspective, because one of the many reasons I've felt grateful to be here at Feeding Westchester, in addition to the incredible team, in addition to the incredible mission, in addition to the incredible community, is because I do feel like everything that I've done in my career has led me to this point. And what I mean by that is, as a young leader, I struggled to learn to be a good leader, right? And so I think the first thing that happened was I stated that intention. It is important to me to be the best leader I can be, and that doesn't just happen. You have to develop skills, you have to develop knowledge. And one of my favorite people to quote is Don Miguel Ruiz. Do you know him? He does the four agreements.
No, I don't know.
The very first of the four agreements is don't take anything personally. And I think that is very difficult, particularly when you're a young.
And even if you can do it 9 out of 10 times, it's not always easy to do.
That's right. And I have come to believe that it's the things that bother us most in other people that are the things in ourselves we need to work on most, right? We have a gazillion opportunities throughout the course of a day to take something personally, and we don't often. Golly, I hope I don't know anybody who takes every single thing possible personally that they could, because that would just be exhausting, right? And so when I do take something personally, the question becomes why? What is it that is unresolved for me as a leader that means I took that personally? Because the way people behave and respond is about them, not about you,
That's
right? And the
Yep.
only thing we can do is control how we choose to behave in a circumstance. So I feel very fortunate to have fallen flat on my face so many times in my over the years of my.
Doesn't feel good in the moment, but you move past it. I said it doesn't feel good in the moment. Yeah.
That's right. But it's true what they say, at least for me, which it's in those moments that you learn the most.
Something that, I'm seeing a theme in everything that you do in your career, and, even the topics here, the better, faster, stronger. I love how you get clarity around everything, whether it's writing it down, identifying the one problem, and then moving towards it, but being very deliberate in stating what you want. And I think that, that's maybe a subtext to everything that you're talking about here. And I agree with that. And I think that that's something that, even myself, I can do better, because in the course of a day, like you said, there's a million opportunities, and you have to decide on, I'm sure as a leader, you've been here before too. You sit down at your desk and you're like, and especially over the last year, I'm certain that this has happened to you. You sit down, you're like, what should I be working on right now, right? And I think that if you start with, what's the most important lever that I can pull? What's the most important thing that I can do? And getting clarity around it. And I'm seeing that, like I said, a theme across all the comments that you're making is getting that clarity. And clearly it's working for you and the organizations that you work for.
So I really appreciate that. I think this is true for us all, and particularly over the last 15 months, which is we cannot do it all. And I would just say, one of the things we try to maintain a really high awareness of is that mental health is so critical physical health is so critical, right? And in these difficult times, you have to prioritize, or else you will just exhaust yourself, beyond reason. And I always tell myself, Karen, this is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
may be
Yeah.
we may be sprinting through quite a bit of those 26 miles, right? But we have to have that ability to keep at the forefront of hunger relief here at Feeding Westchester, because it's just so important to so many.
Well, thank you for that. I would like to transition the call and give you an opportunity now to talk about Feeding Westchester, a little bit more of what you're about and how people can get involved in your cause.
Oh, I appreciate that so much. We talked a little bit about how when you think about Westchester County, you don't think hunger first. And we have hundreds of thousands of neighbors right here in our community that don't have access to enough food. The face of hunger is often not what we think, Jamie, right? When I speak to groups and I say, what do you see when you close your eyes and see a hungry person? I'm sure you can imagine. I hear about the man or woman standing on the off-ramp with a sign that's asking for food. But we have hungry children, hungry seniors, hardworking families. It's expensive to live here in Westchester County,
Sure.
and challenging for those who don't earn wages that are high enough to support that. So the face of hunger, the face of our hungry neighbors is often not who we think.
So if somebody was looking for your services and they were looking, for assistance in putting food on the table, feeding their family, what's a good way for them to reach out?
So I so appreciate that. So I would tell you two things: to help, which we so value and appreciate, or to find help. The best resource is feedingwestchester.org.
Fantastic. And I could say that, Terry Tech has been involved in a couple of the events over the years, and it's a lot of fun. We did the food packing, just for the, I think it was a backpack program that we did, send home with some of the children after school for weekends, to provide some assistance there. And then we organized a team, and it was, I don't remember that it was the Scoopathon, which was really cool. Really cool.
Fabulous. We appreciate y'all's not just your partnership day to day with our tech needs, but also your philanthropic partnership. And I'll tell you something, over these past 15 months, which have been really painful for so many people, I've told you a little bit about how much my staff means to. Over the past 15 months, which have been so difficult for so many, I've been able to share with you a little bit about how the Feeding Westchester team has doubled down, literally, how they've shown up every single day to ensure that there's food on tables. And I'll tell you something else that I want you to know, which is they're so passionate about helping our neighbors.
Yeah.
And when I go down and check on them and say, how's it going? Is there anything you want me to know? What unites them, and frankly humbles me, right, is that they are here no matter what to make sure food gets on tables.
That's amazing. That's a real testament to your team. And, obviously we've worked with your organization, and, our experience with your team has been the same. They're fantastic, committed, dedicated, bright people. And, you guys are doing great things in Westchester and in local communities. So thank you for everything that you do. And I want to be respectful of your time. I'm certain that you got a million things to do today. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on Better, Faster, Stronger. Be sure to check out Terry Tech's other podcasts at bfsmetro.com. Karen, it was a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks again. And I encourage you to get involved in supporting the cause, Feeding Westchester, feedingwestchester.org, correct?
Correct. And really, Jamie, we couldn't do it without this team right here at our facility in Elmsford. And it's due to the generosity of you, Terry Tech, and so many other generous individuals and companies throughout Westchester County that we are able to feed the hungry. Together, we are Feeding Westchester.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.